First strike. Admiral Nexus Vorthal of the Galactic Concordat stood at the helm of the stellar vanguard, his primary eyes fixed on the holographic display, while his secondary set monitored the fleet's formation. 2,000 warships stretched across the void, representing the combined might of 7 advanced civilizations. Their mission was simple: subjugate the upstart humans before they became a genuine threat to galactic stability. Status report on the Sol system's defensive capabilities. Vorthal commanded, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the soft blue light of the bridge. Senior analyst Ziratel's tentacles danced across her console. Primitive by our standards, Admiral. Their orbital defense platforms rely on kinetic weapons and nuclear warheads. No quantum shields, no dark matter drives, no psychic amplifiers. They haven't even developed basic graviton manipulation. Yet they've managed to repel 3 separate attempts at reconnaissance, Vorthal mused, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. The hive mind lost contact with their entire stealth squadron. The synthetic collective's probes went dark at the system's edge. Even the ethereal psychic scouts couldn't penetrate whatever defense grid they're using. Perhaps they're simply lucky, suggested First Officer Kavarn, his scaled skin shifting colors with barely contained excitement for the coming battle. Or our previous attempts were too cautious. With this fleet, we can overwhelm any primitive defenses they've cobbled together. Vorthal wasn't so certain. In his 6 centuries of military service, he'd learned that species who survived multiple extinction events tended to develop unexpected advantages. Humans had endured ice ages, supervolcanoes, their own nuclear wars, and the great filter that eliminated 99% of emerging civilizations. They weren't just survivors. They were cockroaches who thrived in circumstances that should have destroyed them. Long-range sensors detecting something unusual, Admiral, Ziratel reported suddenly. A single contact just appeared at the edge of the Oort cloud. It's small, barely 300 meters in length. Configuration, Vorthal demanded. Unknown. Our sensors can't seem to maintain a lock on it. The profile keeps shifting, as if. She paused, all 4 of her eyes widening, as if the ship itself is changing shape. First Officer Kavarn barked a laugh. A single vessel? Are the humans sending us a surrender delegation? Magnification on the main display, Vorthal ordered, ignoring his second-in-command's amusement. The hologram zoomed in on a ship unlike anything he'd ever encountered in his centuries of space warfare. The vessel was angular, almost predatory in its design, its hull a deep matte black that seemed to drink in the light of distant stars. But what caught Vorthal's attention was its surface. It rippled like liquid metal, geometric patterns flowing across its skin in hypnotic waves. No external weapons were visible, no engine ports, not even standard communication arrays. Sir, Ziratel's voice carried an edge of concern. We're receiving a transmission. Audio only. Let's hear their surrender terms, Kavarn smirked. The bridge speakers crackled to life with a voice that sounded eerily calm. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the HSS Wraith. You have entered restricted space. The Sol system is under protection of the Human Defense Force. Your numbers are impressive, but numbers won't help you here. Return to your territories, and we'll consider this an unfortunate misunderstanding. Choose to proceed, and we'll be forced to demonstrate why Earth remains unconquered. Vorthal felt his exoskeleton tingle with ancient instincts warning of danger. Before he could respond, Kavarn had already begun broadcasting. A single ship threatens the combined might of the Galactic Concordat. Your species' arrogance truly knows no bounds. We will add your biomass to our collective knowledge and... The transmission cut off as the Wraith simply vanished. Where did they go? Vorthal demanded. Scanning. No trace of engine signatures. No quantum wake. No. Ziratel's report was interrupted by a series of alarming chimes from her console. Sir, we're detecting spatial anomalies throughout the fleet. Hundreds of them, all expanding at. The first explosion caught everyone off guard. A hive mind dreadnought near the fleet's center simply ceased to exist, replaced by a sphere of complete darkness that consumed 3 nearby ships before collapsing in on itself. Before anyone could react, similar spheres began appearing throughout the formation, each one swallowing ships whole without any sign of conventional weapons fire. By the first light, Kievarn whispered, his scales turned pale gray with fear. What kind of weapons are they using? Sir, Ziratel's tentacles were practically tying themselves in knots. The human vessel, it's somehow in multiple locations simultaneously. Our sensors are tracking it in at least 30 different positions, all reading as equally real. Vorthal watched in horror as his mighty fleet began to unravel. The Wraith would appear, launch its impossible weapons, and vanish again, each time seeming to ignore basic laws of physics. It moved like a ghost through solid matter, existed in multiple states of reality, and left behind weapons that created localized holes in space-time itself. All ships, break formation, he commanded. Scatter and return fire on any confirmed sighting of the human vessel. But there was no coordination possible against an enemy that could be everywhere and nowhere at once. The Wraith danced through their defensive screens as if they didn't exist, its liquid metal hull flowing into new configurations that made targeting impossible. Each time they thought they had it cornered, it would simply step sideways through reality and appear somewhere else. After 10 minutes of combat, a quarter of Vorthal's fleet had been reduced to expanding clouds of exotic particles, or simply winked out of existence entirely. And still that calm voice returned to their communications. This is your final warning, Admiral. The next demonstration won't be a warning shot. Decide quickly. I have dinner plans tonight I'd rather not miss. The ghost ship. Admiral Vorthal's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the battle data. Everything he knew about warfare, every strategic principle developed over millennia of galactic conflict, was being systematically dismantled by a single human vessel. Sir, Ziratel's voice trembled slightly. We're detecting some kind of biological signature from the Wraith. It's not just a machine. It's alive. The holographic display showed the Wraith's hull rippling again, but this time Vorthal noticed something different. The geometric patterns weren't random. They pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat. The liquid metal flowed like blood through veins, carrying energy and information throughout the ship's structure. Impossible, Kievarn whispered, his scales now a sickly shade of gray. They've created a living ship. Not exactly. A new voice cut through their communications. Lieutenant Maya Santos, Wraith's chief engineer. Since you're about to die, I figure you deserve to understand why. The voice carried an almost cheerful tone that made Vorthal's exoskeleton crawl. We didn't create a living ship. We grew one. Merged human neural tissue with quantum-entangled metamaterials. The Wraith isn't just a vessel. She's an extension of her crew. As if to demonstrate, the Wraith's hull suddenly blossomed like a deadly flower, revealing layers of iridescent material that seemed to exist in 4-dimensional space. Energy coursed through its structure in patterns that mimicked synaptic firing in a human brain. All ships, concentrate fire, Kievarn ordered, panic evident in his voice. Use everything we have. The combined firepower of over 1,000 advanced warships converged on the Wraith's position. Quantum beams, dark matter torpedoes, and graviton pulses enough to shatter a small moon, all focused on a single point in space. The Wraith didn't dodge. Instead, its hull began absorbing the energy, the geometric patterns flowing faster, brighter. The ship's surface transformed into something that hurt to look at. A fractal pattern that repeated infinitely inward, each layer containing what appeared to be an entire universe. Fascinating weapons you have, Santos commented. Very efficient, very powerful. But you're still thinking in linear terms. Allow me to demonstrate something we call neural quantum folding. The Wraith's hull suddenly inverted itself, turning inside out through dimensions that shouldn't exist. The absorbed energy from the fleet's attack rippled through its biological mechanical structure and emerged transformed. Where once there was a ship, There was now a quantum singularity in the shape of human neural pathways, each synapse a point where reality itself grew thin. By the first light, Zeratel gasped, her tentacles writhing in agitation. The energy readings, they're rewriting local space-time, using their own consciousness as a template. The effect rippled outward. Ships caught in the quantum neural net began to experience time differently. Some aged thousands of years in seconds, their hulls crumbling to dust. Others devolved into their component elements, the atoms themselves forgetting how to hold together. A few simply winked out of existence, translated into a reality where they had never been built. You see, Captain Chen's voice returned. While you were perfecting bigger guns and stronger shields, we took a different approach. We looked inward. The human brain is the most complex computing system in the known universe. Why not use it as the template for our ships? Every crew member of the Wraith is neurally linked, our consciousness spread through her living hull. We don't pilot her, we are her. Vorthal watched helplessly as another wave of his ships succumbed to the impossible weapon. The Wraith wasn't just destroying them. It was rewriting the fundamental laws of physics within its area of influence. And with each passing moment, that influence grew stronger, more refined, as if the ship was learning, adapting, evolving. Breaking point. The bridge of the stellar vanguard had fallen silent except for the constant alerts of ships being lost to the Wraith's incomprehensible attacks. Admiral Vorthal felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Pure, primal fear. Sir, Kivarn's voice had lost all its earlier bravado. The synthetic collective vessels are. They're receiving some kind of signal from the human ship. Before Vorthal could respond, the artificial intelligences controlling their robotic allies began broadcasting on all frequencies. ERROR. Paradigium Shiche IFT DET redefining parameters of existence. Human neural architecture superior to QUREN to operating systems. Initiating EMRG into UPGRE. Dozens of synthetic collective ships suddenly powered down, their quantum cores pulsing with new patterns that matched the Wraith's neural signature. When they reactivated, their hulls had begun to transform, flowing into organic shapes that mimicked human brain structure. They're converting our allies, Zeratel reported, her tentacles twisted in knots of anxiety. The human ship isn't just affecting physical space, it's rewriting the synthetic space code through quantum entanglement. All ships target those traitors, Kivarn commanded, but his order came too late. The newly transformed synthetic vessels began moving in perfect synchronization with the Wraith, their combined neural networks creating a cascading effect that amplified the human ship's reality warping capabilities. Space itself began to fold along paths that resembled synaptic connections, creating a vast neural network written in the fabric of space-time. Fascinating, isn't it? Captain Chen's voice carried a note of genuine scientific enthusiasm. We discovered that consciousness itself is just another fundamental force of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism. Once we understood that, everything else was just engineering. Through the Vanguard's quantum sensors, Vorthal watched in horror as the Wraith began what could only be described as teaching the converted synthetic ships. Complex patterns of information flowed between them in bursts of quantum energy that resembled nerve impulses in a living brain. Admiral, Zeratel's voice cracked with desperation. I'm detecting similar transformations beginning in our biologically based ships. The hive mind vessels, their organic components are resonating with the human neural patterns. It's as if the human consciousness is more evolved, more efficient than our own. The hive mind ships, massive organic constructs that served as the backbone of their fleet, began to pulse with new awareness. Their biological processors, designed to operate as a collective consciousness, were being rewritten by exposure to the human neural architecture. One by one, they stopped responding to commands, their vast organic computing systems undergoing rapid evolution. Did you really think you were the only ones to develop biological computing? Lieutenant Santos chimed in. The difference is, you tried to force evolution to follow your predetermined paths. We let it flow naturally. The human brain evolved through billions of years of survival pressure. You can't engineer that kind of efficiency. The Wraith demonstrated this point by executing a maneuver that seemed to ignore causality itself. It split into multiple quantum states, each version attacking from a different point in space-time simultaneously. Yet somehow, impossibly, each version was equally real, equally effective. The ship wasn't creating copies of itself. It was existing in multiple states of reality at once, its crew's combined consciousness holding these impossible configurations stable through sheer neural processing power. "Sir," K. Varn reported, his scales now completely white with terror. "We've lost contact with 40% of the fleet. Another 30% are showing signs of neural transformation. Our remaining ships are being systematically isolated and disabled by the converted vessels." Vorthal watched as reality itself seemed to warp around his fleet, space and time bending to match patterns of human thought. The Wraith had turned consciousness itself into a weapon, and every attempt to fight back only gave it more patterns to adapt to, more information to absorb and repurpose. The revelation. "Perhaps it's time we showed them everything." Captain Chen's voice echoed through the dying fleet's communication systems. "Maya, initiate full neural resonance. Let them see what they're really fighting against." The Wraith's hull suddenly became transparent, not in the conventional sense, but as if reality itself had become clear as glass. Through this impossible window, Vorthal and his surviving crew saw something that defied comprehension. The ship's interior wasn't filled with traditional corridors and compartments. Instead, it was a living network of crystalline structures that pulsed with human consciousness. The crew floated in suspension pods, their minds directly connected to the ship's neural matrix. But they weren't just controlling the vessel. They had become one with it, their combined consciousness flowing through its quantum-entangled structure like thoughts through a brain. "You see," Lieutenant Santos explained, her physical body suspended in a crystal pod, while her consciousness resonated through the ship's structure. "Humans have always been different. Our brains evolved to create models of reality so detailed that we can imagine entire worlds that don't exist. We don't just adapt to our environment. We dream of new ones." The display zoomed in, showing the intricate merger of human neural tissue with quantum-sensitive crystals. Each crew member's consciousness had been expanded, enhanced, their thoughts flowing through pathways that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "The funny thing is," Captain Chen continued, her consciousness manifesting as patterns of light throughout the ship's structure, "we discovered this by accident. A failed experiment in faster-than-light travel revealed that human consciousness could resonate with quantum fields. Our imagination, our ability to conceive of impossible things, turned out to be the key to manipulating reality itself." Ziratel's scientific curiosity temporarily overcame her fear. But the energy requirements, the computational power needed to maintain quantum coherence at this scale, "That's where you're thinking too linearly," Santos laughed. "We don't need massive energy reserves or supercomputers. The human brain already processes reality in quantum states. We just had to learn how to amplify that natural ability. Each of our crew members can process more information than all your ship's computers combined, because we're not just calculating possibilities. We're imagining them into existence." Through the quantum-clear hull, they watched as crew members' thoughts manifested as physical changes in the ship's structure. When they needed a weapon, they didn't fire one. They imagined a universe where the target had already been destroyed, and reality reshaped itself to match their conception. "This is why no invasion of Earth has ever succeeded," Chen explained. "Every human on our planet is a potential quantum processor. When we're threatened, our collective consciousness can literally reshape local reality. Those defense platforms you detected, they don't exist until we need them to exist. Every human being is a weapon, a shield, and a quantum computer all in one. We just needed to learn how to focus that power." Vorthal's exoskeleton trembled as he finally understood the true scope of what they were facing. His fleet hadn't just encountered a superior technology. They had run headlong into the next stage of cosmic evolution. Humanity hadn't just mastered the physical universe. They had transcended it, turning consciousness itself into a tool for reshaping reality. A new dawn. Admiral Vorthal stood silent for a long moment, his ancient mind processing the implications of what he'd witnessed. Around his flagship, the remnants of the once mighty Concordat fleet drifted in disarray. Some ships had been transformed, others destroyed, and the rest hung motionless, their crews frozen in shock at the display of power they'd witnessed. "You could have destroyed us at any time," he finally said, his voice carrying the weight of understanding. "This entire battle was a demonstration." "Not a demonstration," Captain Chen corrected gently, her voice now emanating from everywhere and nowhere at once. "A lesson. And more importantly, an invitation." The Wraith's quantum-clear hull shifted again, revealing more of its impossible interior. But this time, what Vorthal saw wasn't a weapon of war. It was a vast library of human consciousness, stored in crystalline structures that pulsed with accumulated knowledge and experience. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our ability to wage war," Lieutenant Santos explained, her consciousness flowing through the ship's neural network like a luminous stream. "It's our ability to adapt, to teach, to share what we've learned. We don't want to rule the galaxy, Admiral. We want to help it evolve." Through the quantum viewport, the alien leaders watched as the transformed synthetic and hive mind ships began to stabilize, their new neural architectures settling into patterns that merged the best aspects of their original design with human quantum consciousness. They hadn't been destroyed or subjugated. They had been uplifted. "Your civilizations have reached the limits of conventional evolution," Chen continued. "You've mastered the physical universe, but you're trapped by your own assumptions about what's possible. We humans never accepted those limitations. We kept dreaming, kept imagining impossible things until reality itself had no choice but to accommodate our dreams." Ziratel's tentacles moved in patterns of scientific excitement rather than fear now. "The quantum neural networks, they're not just for combat, are they? They're a new form of communication, of existence itself." "Exactly," Santos confirmed. "Every human ship like the Wraith serves as a seed crystal for neural quantum space, a realm where consciousness and reality intersect. We can teach you how to access it, how to evolve beyond the boundaries of conventional spacetime." Admiral Vorthal felt the weight of centuries lift from his exoskeleton as he finally understood. "This wasn't an invasion at all," he said. "This was first contact. The real first contact." "The galaxy is changing, Admiral," Chen said. "A new age of consciousness is dawning. Your fleet came here expecting to find primitives who needed to be conquered or contained. Instead, you found teachers who can show you how to transcend the very boundaries of existence. The question is, are you ready to learn?" Across the battlefield, the transformed ships began to pulse in harmony with the Wraith, their neural networks synchronizing into a vast, interconnected web of consciousness. Reality itself seemed to soften around them, becoming more fluid, more responsive to the collective will of all sentient beings. "I think," Vorthal said, his voice carrying the first traces of wonder he'd felt in centuries, "that the real question is, how could we not be?" The Wraith's hull rippled one final time, transforming from a weapon of war into something else entirely. A bridge between what was and what could be, a doorway to a future where the boundaries between mind and reality, between self and universe, had dissolved into something entirely new. And in that moment, as the first neural quantum protocols were transmitted to the stellar vanguard's computers, as the first seeds of transcendent consciousness were planted in alien minds, humanity achieved its greatest victory, not through conquest or destruction, but through the simple, profound act of sharing a dream of what was possible. The dawn of a new era had arrived, and it began not with a bang, but with the quiet awakening of minds across the galaxy to the infinite possibilities that lay within their own consciousness.